Their name ignites fear everywhere they go.
Who is the most dangerous enemy of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club? I guess you already know the answer. The long-standing battle between Hells Angels and the Outlaws almost seems never-ending. Let's explore some nooks and corners of that. From 1977 to 1984, the Hells Angels and the Outlaws Motorcycle Clubs fought what came to be known in Canada as the First Biker War. The Angels emerged victorious. As the Outlaws retreated into their Ontario stronghold, the Angels began consolidating their activities and expanding, moving into port cities Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Vancouver, British Columbia. The conflict is known in Canada as the First Biker War, but the first large conflict between bikers in Canada was the Satan's Choice Popeye's War, which occurred from 1974 to 1976. The Outlaws allied themselves with the largest motorcycle club in Canada, Satan's Choice, in 1974. This pact led to a situation where the Outlaws challenged the supremacy of the Hells Angels' influence in Quebec through access to the Montreal chapter of Satan's Choice. This led the Montreal chapter and their outlaw allies into open conflict with the Hells Angels-backed Popeye Moto Club, resulting in a number of casualties on both sides in what would come to be known as the Satan's Choice Popeye's War. Both clubs sought to expand into Canada, with the Outlaws arriving a few months before the Hells Angels in 1977. In 1976, the leader of the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club, Bernie Guindon, was sent to prison for narcotics charges. In 1977, the Outlaws expanded into Canada, and the arrest of Guindon led to the fracturing of Satan's Choice. On 1 July 1977, the Ottawa, St. Catharines, Windsor, and Montreal chapters left Satan's Choice in favor of the Outlaws. Garnet McEwen called a secret meeting on 1 July 1977, with most of the chapter presidents being present, where he called for patching over to the Outlaws, arguing that being members of an American-based club would add to their power, saying that the St. Catharines and Windsor chapters had already decided to join the Outlaws. The chapter presidents, known to be loyal to Guindon, were not invited to the meeting. The Hells Angels would also expand into Canada in 1977, when in December they patched over the second largest motorcycle club in Canada, the Popeye Moto Club, which they had been scouting for years as it was known as the most notorious and violent motorcycle club in Canada. Tensions between the two groups in Ontario and Quebec began almost immediately, with small scuffles and incidents at the end of 1977. In February 1978, a chapter of the Montreal Rockers Motorcycle Club became the second Quebec chapter of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Same month, on February 15, Hells Angels member Yves Apache Trudeau shot and killed a member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, Robert Cote, and wounded another at the Joey Brewery in Montreal, Quebec. This was the beginning of the war between the Angels and the Outlaws in the province. On March 21, 1978, a bomb placed under the car of Guy Carteret, the Outlaws Motorcycle Club Montreal chapter president, exploded in front of a bar on Bordeaux Street in Montreal. Carteret was killed instantly, and several others were injured by debris from the explosion. On 25 April 1978, Dennis LeCure Kennedy and another Hells Angel entered the Outlaw Clubhouse at 144 Rue Saint-Ferdinand and went on a shooting rampage. Although no one was killed, a number of outlaws were wounded. On April 26 of the same year, Athanas Tom Thumb Markopoulos, a member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, was murdered by two members of the Hells Angels. On 27 April 1978, Kennedy shot and badly wounded an outlaw, Francois Polisano, and his girlfriend Suzanne Harvey, while the two were drinking at the Industrial Brassiere bar. Witnesses described the gunman who shot Polisano and Harvey as leaving in a green car, which the police found parked outside the Angels clubhouse. Ballistic tests showed that the bullets fired in the Industrial Brassiere shooting were from the same handgun used at the attack at the Outlaws clubhouse. As a result, Buteau changed the rules, ordering that henceforward, Angels were to leave their guns at the scene of the crime in order to reduce the chances of the police being able to tie together crimes. On 12 May 1978, the Outlaws struck back when a Hells Angel, René Canis-Hébert, was wounded, his arm being grazed in a drive-by shooting outside the Angels' Montreal clubhouse. On May 26, 1978, Jean Gontier, an associate of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, was beaten to death by Paul Ringuet, an associate of the Hells Angels. They were both arrested and sent to the penitentiary of Saint Vincent de Paul in Laval when the murder occurred. In October, Walter Stadnik, then president of the Wild Ones MC in Hamilton, Ontario, traveled to Montreal to make contact with Yves Buteau, the national president of Hells Angels Canada, to discuss having the Wild Ones patch over to become the first Hells Angels chapter in Ontario. On October 12, 1978, the members of the Hells Angels, Georges Mousseau and Jean Brochu, as well as Guy Gator Davies, a member of the Wild Ones, were assassinated at the Tourbillon Café on Rue Beaubien in Montreal when the Outlaws MC attacked the meeting. Hells Angels members Louis Thierry Lapierre and Bruno Colombe were also injured during the Le Tourbillon massacre. The Outlaws saw the possibility of a Hells Angel chapter being established in Ontario by way of the Wild Ones as a threat. On October 12, 1978, two American outlaws, one from Miami and the other from Detroit, entered Le Tourbillon after following the Angels. One angel, Louis Thierry Lapierre, rose to confront the two American outlaws, only to be gunned down when one of the outlaws pulled out his handgun while the other outlaw pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and opened fire on the party in the booth. One of the angels, Jean Brochu, was killed, while Lapierre and another angel, Bruno Colombe, were badly wounded. The Wild Ones also suffered losses, with George Chico Mousseau and Gary Gator Davies killed. Stadnik survived by hiding under a table. Buteau learned that the man who hired the two American outlaws was Roland Roxy du Temple of the Outlaw Montreal chapter and sent ace assassin Yves Apache Trudeau to kill him. However, it wouldn't be until March 29, 1979 that the deed would be complete, with du Temple being killed by a car bomb. On September 12, 1983, a funeral for Yves Buteau was held at a church in the town of Sorel. It is estimated that there were over 2,000 supporters and 150 members of the Hells Angels from Canada, the United States, England, and elsewhere who rode in procession from Sorel to Drummondville, where he was buried, a journey covering a distance of approximately 40 miles. He shares a gravestone with Hells Angels member Adrien Fleury, aka Pistache. A day after Buteau's funeral, a young boy discovered a bomb on the route the funeral procession had gone past, which consisted of Hells Angels bikers. Police theorized that it had been placed and camouflaged the night before the funeral in an attempt to kill Hells Angels bikers. Buteau's murder did not change the tide of the war in favor of the Outlaws. In March 1984, Bernard Savoy, the brother of the right-hand man of the Outlaw Montreal chapter president Daniel Savoy, was killed by a bomb planted in his car. In May 1984, Daniel Savoy and Jean Calipeau, both members of the Outlaws, were assassinated while riding their motorcycles down a highway by gunmen riding motorcycles. By 1984, the Hells Angels had dealt major damage to the Montreal chapters of the Outlaws, and the conflict came to an end with the Outlaws pulling back to their power base in Ontario. A year later, when Yves Trudeau turned Crown Informant, he admitted to killing 43 people between September 1973 and July 1985. He was the first Canadian Hells Angel to earn the Filthy Few patch, awarded to members who had killed for the club. During the biker war between the Hells Angels and the Outlaws for control of Montreal's drug trade between 1978 and 1983, Trudeau killed 18 out of the 23 outlaws slain during the conflict. Langton called Trudeau a psychopathic killer and a killing machine par excellence, who was the Angels' most dangerous killer. In 1985, construction of a bunker in Danville, Quebec by Outlaws Motorcycle Club was started. On September 15, 1989, the Outlaws bunker was rocked by an explosion during an attack. In April 1990, the municipality of Danville destroyed the Outlaws Motorcycle Club bunker following its purchase from the Motorcycle Club. In September of the same year, Claude Meunier, the leader of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, was assassinated when he was struck multiple times by a man firing from a moving automobile in the Côte-Saint-Paul district of Montreal. The police found the murder weapon in a storm sewer near the scene of the crime. In October 1990, Tony Mentor, a friend of Claude Meunier, who is the leader of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club murdered the previous month, was murdered in front of the Shop Family Kitchen Equipment in the Park Extension district of Montreal. In 1991, on February 20, Darquet LeBlanc, a former member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club who became an associate of the Hells Angels, was assassinated along with his right-hand man and brother-in-law, Yvon Martel. Their corpses were discovered in an alley near Boulevard Taschereau in Longueuil. March 26, 1992 saw the founding of the Montreal Rockers, a Hells Angels support club sponsored by Maurice Mom Boucher. These rockers are not to be mistaken for those who became outlaws in 1978. On January 29, 1997, in the midst of the Quebec Biker War, which saw the Hells Angels engage with Canadian-based Rock Machine for territorial supremacy in Quebec, the Hells Angels, Outlaws, and Bandidos agreed to an international peace treaty to end the war between the three major transnational criminal organizations. On May 28, 2008, the outlaw Roy Capone Haynes Jr., aged 34, alleged leader of the Outlaws operating in the downtown area and in the Pont St. Charles, Verdun, and St. Henri neighborhoods in Montreal. 6 members of the Outlaws were arrested following Operation Satellites, which was undertaken 2 years previously. The gang was selling 1 to 2 kilograms of cocaine and crack per month. In addition to the drug trafficking and charges of gangsterism, the leader of the Outlaws in Quebec is charged with procuring. He allegedly used the income of the work of his prostitutes to buy drugs. There are a lot of sagas that ended in a bitter note with the Outlaws and Hells Angels. Keep following our videos to know about them.